1. Introduction. The Book of Tobit was written in the early 2nd century BC, included in the Catholic Bible for over 15 centuries since church councils affirmed it in 393 and 397 AD, and used in wedding ceremonies across the world. Yet most Christians have never heard of it. Why? Because Protestant reformers removed it during the 1500s, calling it non-canonical. But here's what they missed. This book contains some of the clearest biblical teaching on angels, divine providence, and the sacrament of marriage. Today we're exploring what Protestants left behind and why it matters for your faith. The story of how entire books disappeared from Christian Bibles reveals a theological divide that continues today. 2. The Protestant Purge, why reformers rejected a 1,000-year tradition. When you pick up a Protestant Bible, you're holding a book that's missing 7 entire texts that Catholics have read for over 1,000 years. The Book of Tobit sits at the center of this divide, representing one of the most significant splits in Christian history. Tobit's journey to your local Catholic Bible wasn't accidental. Jewish scholars in Alexandria translated their sacred texts into Greek, creating the Septuagint, and included Tobit alongside books like Genesis and Psalms, treating it as equally authoritative. Early Christian communities inherited this collection and never questioned Tobit's place. The Councils of Hippo in 393 and Carthage in 397 AD officially recognized Tobit as canonical scripture. For over a millennium, Christians read Tobit during Mass, quoted it in theological debates, and used its prayers in wedding ceremonies. Then came 1517. Martin Luther sparked the Protestant Reformation with his famous 95 Theses, but his biblical revolution went far beyond challenging papal authority. Luther examined the Hebrew Bible used by Palestinian Jews and noticed it lacked the 7 books found in the Greek Septuagint. Luther labeled Tobit apocryphal due to perceived geographical anachronisms and its positive view of works and angels, which clashed with sola fide and sola Christus. These weren't minor theological preferences, they struck at the heart of Reformation doctrine. Luther's objections weren't purely academic. Tobit teaches that almsgiving helps atone for sin, which contradicted Luther's doctrine of salvation by faith alone. The book's positive portrayal of angelic intercession clashed with Protestant emphasis on Christ as the sole mediator. Tobit's detailed marriage prayers seemed to support Catholic sacramental theology. Luther placed these books in a separate intertestamental section, though some Anglican and Lutheran traditions still read them devotionally. The Catholic Church responded decisively at the Council of Trent in 1546. Church fathers didn't merely defend these books, they solemnly declared them sacred and canonical. The council stated that anyone who rejected these texts as inspired scripture would be anathema, formally excommunicated. Cardinal Cajetan, who had debated Luther personally, argued that the Church's consistent acceptance of these books for over 1,000 years proved their divine inspiration. The council pointed out that Christ and the apostles quoted from the Septuagint, not the Hebrew Bible, legitimizing its expanded canon. This split created 2 fundamentally different Bibles that persist today. Protestant Bibles contain 66 books, while Catholic Bibles contain 73. Protestants call the 7 missing books Apocrypha, while Catholics consider them fully canonical scripture. The theological consequences run deeper than simple book counting. Protestants lost access to 3 core biblical teachings: explicit support for angelic intercession, the spiritual value of almsgiving, and sacred marriage prayers blessed by heavenly presence. They abandoned detailed angelology that explains how heavenly beings interact with humans and rejected the only biblical book that presents matrimony as a sacred covenant accompanied by divine intervention. Catholics retained these teachings as part of revealed scripture. When a Catholic priest reads Tobit during wedding ceremonies, he's drawing from texts that shaped Christian understanding of marriage for 16 centuries. The Protestant Reformation didn't just split the church, it divided the Bible itself, leaving millions of Christians without access to scriptures that address life's most challenging spiritual questions. But what exactly did they lose? The Book of Tobit confronts the most universal human struggle with remarkable honesty and depth. 3. When good people suffer, Tobit's answer to life's hardest question. Why do good people suffer while the wicked prosper? This question has tormented believers for millennia, and the Book of Tobit tackles it head-on with a story that refuses easy answers. Meet Tobit, a man whose righteousness becomes his curse. Living in Nineveh during the Assyrian captivity, Tobit maintains perfect religious observance despite persecution. He feeds the hungry, clothes the naked, and risks his life burying executed Jewish prisoners when King Sennacherib forbids proper burial. This connects to the deportation described in 2 Kings 15 verse 29, though Codex Sinaiticus corrects the historical detail by identifying Sargon II rather than Shalmaneser as the conquering king. Tobit follows every dietary law and pays his tithes religiously even when his family faces poverty. The king discovers Tobit's illegal burial activities and confiscates his property, forcing him into hiding. When Sennacherib dies and his son Esarhaddon takes power, Tobit returns home hoping for relief. Instead, he faces a test that would break most people's faith. During the Feast of Pentecost, while Tobit prepares to share his modest meal with a poor man, a neighbor informs him that another murdered Jew lies unburied in the marketplace. Tobit immediately abandons his feast to perform this dangerous act of mercy. He retrieves the corpse, hides it until nightfall, then buries it according to Jewish law. Exhausted and ritually unclean from handling the dead, Tobit sleeps outside his house near the courtyard wall. Above him, sparrows nest in the wall's crevices. During the night, fresh bird droppings fall directly into his eyes, creating white films that steal his sight completely. The irony cuts deep. Tobit loses his vision immediately after performing an act of religious devotion that risked his life. Physicians cannot restore his sight. His wife Anna must work as a weaver to support their family, earning wages that barely keep them alive. When Anna brings home a goat as additional payment, Tobit accuses her of theft, unable to believe they could receive such unexpected blessing. Anna responds with deep frustration about how his charitable deeds and righteous acts have apparently brought only suffering upon their household. Friends and neighbors whisper that Tobit's blindness proves God's judgment upon him. They question whether his supposed righteousness was actually hypocrisy. The man who buried others for proper honor now cannot see to perform basic daily tasks. His reputation crumbles along with his health and finances. Meanwhile, in Ecbatana, a young woman named Sarah endures a different form of inexplicable suffering. She has married 7 different men, and each husband dies on their wedding night before the marriage is consummated. The demon Asmodeus kills them all in fits of jealous rage, leaving Sarah widowed 7 times without ever experiencing true marriage. The community views her as cursed, untouchable, dangerous to any man who might approach her. Both Tobit and Sarah reach the same breaking point on the same day. Tobit prays for death, telling God he would rather die than continue living with blindness and shame. Sarah simultaneously prays for death, asking God to end her torment rather than force her to endure more accusations and failed marriages. Their prayers rise to heaven at precisely the same moment, creating a divine intersection that changes everything. God hears both prayers simultaneously and dispatches the archangel Raphael to heal them both. Raphael later reveals that angels present human prayers to God, a theme Jesus affirms in Revelation 8 verse 4, connecting Tobit's narrative to broader canonical imagery of angelic intercession. Their suffering wasn't punishment or abandonment but preparation for a greater purpose that would unfold through divine intervention disguised in human form. 4. The Hidden Angel, how Raphael reveals Catholic teaching on divine intervention. Azariah's supernatural knowledge becomes apparent immediately. He knows the fish's medicinal gall can heal blindness and even identifies the demon Asmodeus by name before they encounter Sarah's situation. When Tobias prepares to travel from Nineveh to Media to collect his father's money, this mysterious guide claims to know the route perfectly and promises to bring Tobias safely to his destination. Tobit agrees to hire this stranger, never suspecting that he has just employed one of God's most powerful archangels. The first clear sign of Azariah's true nature comes at the Tigris River. A massive fish attacks Tobias while he washes his feet, lunging from the water with jaws wide enough to swallow him whole. Tobias cries out in terror, but Azariah calmly instructs him to grab the fish and drag it onto shore. After Tobias overcomes his fear and follows these instructions, Azariah provides specific directions for preparing the catch. He tells Tobias to remove the heart, liver, and gallbladder, preserve them carefully, and discard the rest. When Tobias asks why these particular organs matter, Azariah explains their medicinal properties with the precision of a master physician. The heart and liver, when burned, will drive away demons from any person they torment. The gallbladder, when applied to eyes covered with white films, will restore perfect sight. Later, Raphael uses this same gall to restore Tobit's sight completely, demonstrating how God provides healing through providential preparation. Azariah's guidance extends far beyond medical advice. As they approach Media, he reveals intimate knowledge of Tobias's extended family. He knows that Raguel lives in Ecbatana, that Raguel has a daughter named Sarah, and that she has suffered through 7 failed marriages. More remarkably, he explains that Sarah belongs to Tobias by right according to Jewish inheritance law. No human guide could possess such detailed information about family relationships and legal obligations spanning multiple cities. The angel orchestrates every detail of Tobias's meeting with Sarah. He leads Tobias directly to Raguel's house, instructs him on proper etiquette for requesting marriage, and coaches him through the complex negotiations required for an immediate wedding. When Raguel expresses terror about Sarah's previous husband's deaths, Azariah provides reassurance that this marriage will succeed where others failed. Most significantly, Azariah gives Tobias specific instructions for their wedding night that Catholics still incorporate into marriage ceremonies today. He tells the young couple to spend their first night together in prayer rather than physical intimacy, acknowledging God as the source of their union. He provides the exact words they should pray, asking God to grant them mercy and safety, and to allow them to grow old together. These prayers emphasize that marriage serves companionship and procreation according to God's design, not merely personal pleasure. After their successful wedding and the demon's defeat, Azariah reveals his true identity. He announces that he is Raphael, one of 7 holy angels who present the prayers of the righteous before God's glory. He explains that he was sent specifically to heal Tobit's blindness and free Sarah from demonic oppression. Throughout their entire journey, Tobias traveled with an archangel disguised as an ordinary man. This revelation transforms everything Catholics understand about divine intervention. Angels don't simply deliver messages or appear in visions, they actively participate in human affairs as guides, protectors, and healers. But Sarah's situation required more than angelic guidance to resolve. Her torment involved a supernatural enemy that demanded spiritual warfare. 7 dead husbands, the spiritual warfare behind Sarah's torment. The demon Asmodeus orchestrated Sarah's nightmare with calculated precision. 7 men entered her bridal chamber as eager grooms, and 7 men died before dawn, never consummating their marriages. This powerful evil spirit claimed Sarah as his exclusive property, murdering any man who dared approach her marriage bed from obsessive jealousy. He waited until each couple entered their private chamber, then struck with lethal force, ensuring maximum psychological torment for Sarah while creating the appearance that she somehow caused these deaths. Sarah's community turned against her as suspicion replaced sympathy. Neighbors whispered that no woman could lose 7 husbands by coincidence, and her own servants openly mocked her as a murderer, unable to comprehend supernatural explanations for the repeated tragedies. This spiritual attack demonstrates how demons oppose marriage covenants, seeking to destroy the sacred bond between husband and wife according to Catholic teaching on spiritual warfare. When Tobias learns about Sarah's situation, Raphael provides specific battle instructions for defeating this demonic enemy. The archangel explains that the fish's heart and liver, when burned together, will produce smoke that drives away any demon tormenting a person. This supernatural warfare strategy comes directly from God's messenger, and Raphael emphasizes that Tobias must act with faith and courage, following the prescribed ritual exactly as instructed. The exorcism itself unfolds with dramatic intensity. On their wedding night, Tobias places the fish organs on burning incense as Raphael commanded. The smoke rises and fills the bridal chamber with its pungent odor. Asmodeus, unable to withstand this spiritual assault, flees immediately to Upper Egypt, where Raphael pursues and binds him permanently. The demon who terrorized Sarah for years retreats instantly when confronted with angelic power channeled through human obedience. Centuries later, Jesus encounters Sadducees who reference this exact story in their attempt to discredit resurrection doctrine. They pose a hypothetical question about a woman who married 7 brothers successively, asking whose wife she will be in the resurrection. Their scenario directly parallels Sarah's situation, suggesting they knew Tobit's narrative well enough to use it as a theological weapon. Jesus doesn't dismiss their reference as fictional but addresses their question seriously, explaining that marriage relationships don't continue after resurrection because the resurrected live like angels in heaven. By engaging with their Tobit-based example rather than rejecting it, Jesus implicitly acknowledges the book's authority and relevance for theological discussion. Sarah's liberation from demonic oppression created space for authentic marital love to flourish. Her union with Tobias succeeded because it began with spiritual victory rather than mere human desire. But their wedding night revealed something even more profound about the nature of sacred marriage that continues to shape Christian ceremonies today. 6. The Catholic Blueprint for Marriage, Tobias and Sarah's Sacred Union. Catholic priests worldwide read passages from the Book of Tobit during wedding ceremonies because this ancient text contains the most complete biblical teaching on marriage as a sacred covenant. Catholic liturgies often incorporate Tobit's nuptial prayers from chapter 8, verses 5 to 7, directly into the sacrament of marriage, connecting modern couples to a spiritual tradition that spans over 2 millennia. Raphael reveals that God predestined Tobias and Sarah's union from the foundation of the world, making their marriage part of his eternal plan rather than human coincidence. The angel explains that this match represents divine providence at work, transforming what could appear as arrangement into sacred calling. Raphael emphasizes that their union serves God's purposes beyond their personal desires. When Tobias and Sarah enter their bridal chamber after the wedding feast, they make a choice that defines Catholic marriage theology. Instead of immediately consummating their union, they kneel together and pray. Tobias speaks first, addressing God directly, "Blessed are you, O God of our fathers, and blessed is your name in all generations forever. Let the heavens and the whole creation bless you forever." He continues by acknowledging that God created Adam and gave him Eve as a helper and support, establishing that man should not be alone. Their prayer explicitly states that they seek marriage not for lust but for companionship and the blessing of children. Sarah joins her voice to Tobias's prayer, asking God for mercy and protection as they begin their life together. She prays that they might grow old together, demonstrating that their marriage aims for permanence rather than temporary satisfaction. Their combined prayer emphasizes that marriage serves 2 primary purposes: mutual companionship between spouses and the procreation of children according to God's design. Couples praying similar words during the nuptial blessing echo Tobias and Sarah's recognition of marriage as gift and covenant. The decision to spend their wedding night in prayer rather than physical intimacy reveals the spiritual priorities that should govern sacramental marriage. They understand that their union extends beyond personal desires to participate in God's creative work. By placing prayer before pleasure, they acknowledge that marriage requires divine grace to succeed. Their approach models how Catholic couples should view their wedding night as the beginning of a sacred partnership blessed by God. The relationship between Tobias and Sarah demonstrates ideal Catholic marriage dynamics throughout their story. Tobias treats Sarah with respect and tenderness, never demanding or coercive in his approach. He explains his intentions clearly to her father Raguel and seeks proper permission before proposing marriage. Sarah participates actively in their courtship discussions, showing that Catholic marriage requires mutual consent rather than patriarchal dominance. Their interactions model the partnership of equals that Catholic marriage preparation programs teach today. Their union brings healing and restoration to both families. Tobit regains his sight when Tobias returns with the fish gall, while Sarah finally experiences successful marriage after years of supernatural torment. The wedding creates bonds of kinship that extend God's blessing across generations, demonstrating how faithful unions serve purposes beyond the couple themselves. Yet Tobias learned these values from a father whose commitment to justice went far beyond family obligations. Tobit's approach to charity demanded sacrifices that most believers would consider extreme, even dangerous. 7. Radical charity: how Tobit's social teaching challenges modern Catholics. Tobit risks execution every time he buries a corpse. King Sennacherib has forbidden proper burial for executed Jews, making this act of mercy a capital crime. Yet Tobit continues retrieving bodies from the marketplace, hiding them during daylight hours, and burying them after dark according to Jewish law. He loses his property, faces exile, and eventually suffers blindness as direct consequences of this dangerous charity. Most people would stop after the first confiscation of their wealth. Tobit persists even when it destroys his family's security. His commitment to charitable giving becomes more remarkable as his circumstances deteriorate. When Tobit loses his sight and cannot work, his wife Anna supports their household through weaving. Their income drops to subsistence level, yet Tobit continues instructing his son Tobias about charitable obligations. He teaches systematic charitable budgeting, setting aside specific portions of income for different categories of need. Tobit calculates his obligations mathematically, ensuring consistency regardless of his emotional state or personal circumstances. Anna questions this generosity when their family faces genuine hardship. She asks Tobit where his charitable deeds have gotten them, pointing to their poverty and his blindness as evidence that good works don't guarantee divine protection. Her frustration reflects the tension many families experience when charitable giving conflicts with personal financial security. Anna works long hours weaving cloth while Tobit maintains expensive charitable commitments that seem to worsen their situation. Tobit's charity extends far beyond financial contributions to include physical risk and social ostracism. Burying executed criminals makes him an enemy of the state and a target for government persecution. His neighbors view his actions as dangerous fanaticism that threatens their entire community's safety. Tobit accepts social isolation as the price of maintaining his charitable principles. His social teaching encompasses comprehensive care for society's most vulnerable members. He feeds the hungry from his own table, provides clothing for those who lack adequate garments, and ensures proper burial for the dead when their families cannot afford funeral expenses or fear government retaliation. Tobit recognizes no distinction between deserving and undeserving recipients of charity, helping anyone who requires assistance. After Raphael heals Tobit's blindness and arranges Tobias's prosperous marriage, the archangel reveals the spiritual significance of charitable giving. Raphael teaches that alms purge sin and store up treasure before God, echoing Jesus' similar teaching in Luke 11 verse 41 that giving from the heart cleanses everything. This connection demonstrates how Tobit's radical charity aligns with Christ's own instructions about the spiritual power of generous giving. If you risked your safety burying strangers, how would you approach modern charity? Tobit's radical witness challenges comfortable assumptions about reasonable limits on Christian generosity. His willingness to face persecution, poverty, and blindness for charitable principles ultimately produces restoration and blessing for his entire family. His faithfulness during suffering leads to divine intervention that transforms tragedy into triumph, revealing deeper truths about how God works through human suffering and sacrifice. 8. Conclusion. These profound lessons emerge from a single biblical narrative that most Christians never encounter. The Book of Tobit presents Catholic theology through compelling narrative rather than abstract doctrine. Angels actively guide human affairs as Raphael demonstrates throughout his disguised journey with Tobias. Spiritual warfare finds resolution through angelic intervention when Raphael exorcises Asmodeus from Sarah's marriage chamber. Marriage becomes a sacred covenant blessed by heavenly powers when Tobias and Sarah pray together on their wedding night. Protestant reformers removed this theological treasure along with 6 other deuterocanonical books, limiting millions of Christians' access to biblical teachings found in 2 Maccabees on Purgatory and Baruch on intercession. What modern Christians missed when Protestant Bibles excluded Tobit, and why it still matters today, reveals a theological divide that continues shaping Christian understanding 16 centuries after these books entered the biblical canon. If you found Tobit's insights powerful, like and subscribe to deepen your grasp of your faith's hidden gems.